Esther 5. So it came to pass on the third day that Esther dressed herself in royal apparel, and stood in the inner court of the king's house, opposite the king's chamber, and the king sat upon his royal throne, in the royal house, opposite the door of the chamber. And it came to pass, when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter, which she had in her hand, and Esther came and touched the tip of the scepter. Then the king said to her, "What do you want, Queen Esther, or what is your request?" "Up to half of the kingdom will be given to you." And Esther said, "If it seems good to the king, come today with Haman to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Make Haman hasten, so that Esther's desire may be granted." So when the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared, the king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, "What is your request? And it will be granted to you, and what is your desire? And it will be done, even up to half of the kingdom." Then Esther answered and said, "My request and desire is, if I have found favor in the king's eyes, and if it seems good to the king to grant me my request, and fulfill my desire, let the king come with Haman to the banquet that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do according to the king's word." So Haman went out that day happy and in good spirits, but when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and that he did not stand up nor move before him, Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Haman, however, refrained and went to his house, and he sent for his friends, and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his sons, and all that the king had exalted him in, and how he had exalted him above the king's princes and servants. And Haman said, "Queen Esther did not make anyone come with the king to the banquet which he had prepared, except me, and also for tomorrow I am invited by her together with the king. But all this does not satisfy me as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then Xerxes' wife and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and tomorrow tell the king that Mordecai be hanged on it, and then enters joyfully with the king to the banquet." And this advice seemed good to Haman, who ordered the gallows to be made. Esther 6. That same night the king's sleep fled. Then he ordered to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, which were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had denounced Bigtan and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, who guarded the gate, who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then said the king, "What honor and distinction hath this done to Mordecai?" And the king's servants, who ministered with him, said, "Nothing was done to him." Then said the king, "Who is in the court?" And Haman had gone into the outer court of the king's house, to tell the king that Mordecai should be hanged on the gallows which he had prepared for him. And the king's servants said unto him, "Behold, Haman is in the court." And the king told him to come in. And when Haman came in, the king said to him, "What will be done to the man whose honor the king delights in?" Then Haman said in his heart, "Whom would the king delight in to do him more honor than me?" Thus said Haman to the king, "To the man in whose honor the king delights, bring the royal robe that the king usually wears, as well as the horse that the king usually rides, and put the royal crown on his head. And let the garment and the horse be given into the hand of one of the king's noblest princes, and put them on that man whom the king desires to honor, and take him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king desires to honor." Then the king said to Haman, "Make haste, take the garment and the horse, as you have said, and do this to Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate, and omit nothing from everything you said." And Haman took the garment and the horse, and clothed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaimed before him, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king desires to honor." After this Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman ran away to his house, sad, and with his head covered. And Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then his wise men and Zeresh's wife said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have already begun to fall, is of the seed of the Jews, you will not prevail against him, but you will certainly fall before him." And while they were still talking with him, the king's chamberlains arrived and hurried to take Haman to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Esther 7. So when the king came with Haman to drink with Queen Esther, the king said to Esther again, on the second day, at the wine banquet, "What is your request, Queen Esther? And it will be given to you. And what is your wish?" Up to half of the kingdom will be given to you." Then Queen Esther answered and said, "If, O king, I have found grace in thy sight, and if it please the king, let my life be given to me as my petition, and my people as my desire. Because we were sold, I and my people, to destroy, kill, and annihilate us once and for all. If they still sold us for male and female servants, I would remain silent, yet the oppressor could not have compensated for the king's loss." Then spake King Ahasuerus, and said unto Queen Esther, "Who is this, and where is this, whose heart hath moved him to do this?" And Esther said, "The man, the oppressor, and the enemy, is this evil Haman." Then Haman was troubled before the king and queen. And the king in his wrath rose from the feast of wine, and passed into the garden of the palace, and Haman stood up to plead with Queen Esther for her life, because he saw that evil was already determined for him by the king. So when the king returned from the palace garden to the house of the wine banquet, Haman fell prostrate on the bed on which Esther lay. Then said the king, "Would he also want to force the queen before me in this house?" When this word came out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then said Harbona, one of the chamberlains that served before the king, "Behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke in the king's defense, is by Haman's house." Then the king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's anger subsided. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and leave a comment.